we're going to go ahead and get started with the afternoon presentations. And the first one actually is called Career Pathways Vision. At the Texas Education Agency, we've recently had some changes, and TA has done some reorganization and all. And I think CTE has really benefited from some of the changes that have happened there at TEA. And as a result, we have a new executive director in the Department of College, Career, and Military Prep. This executive director, before joining TEA, he's only been there for a couple of months already. His name is Quentin Suffren. He has served as an executive director for consulting for Amplify Education, which is an education technology company based in New York. At Amplify, Quentin was responsible for a portfolio of multi-million-dollar contracts and a team of consultants, project managers, and software developers. He also served as the executive sponsor of major projects with state departments of education and consortia of states in the areas of data management and reporting and digital resource libraries. So prior to his tenure with Amplify, Quentin served as the senior project director with the New Teacher Project and was responsible for implementing Houston ISD's Teacher Appraisal and Development System. He has also served as Chief Academic Officer for the Learning Institute, which provided curriculum and assessment services to over 130 districts in Arkansas and Louisiana. In all, Quentin has over 16 years of experience in large-scale education program implementation, and he also began his experience as a high school English teacher. So let's welcome Quentin Suffren to the stage.
Thank you so much, Diane, for the nice introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I had the opportunity to check in on a couple of sessions today and yesterday, and I can just, there was a lot of energy in the room, and it seems like, at least I feel this way, it's a really exciting time to be in career and technical education. I wanted to speak today a little bit about the agency's direction around CTE, but more broadly, this notion of pathways. And I'll be honest with you, it's a term that is thrown around quite a bit, and I've asked a lot of different people, and they all have different definitions of what that term means. But today I wanted to at least shed some light on kind of our priorities going forward, and hopefully add some information that can help you understand how we want to support the work, particularly in CTE, but in other pathways initiatives as well. Before we get into that, I do think it's important to kind of step back and say a little bit about our direction at the agency. Over the past few months, the agency has gone through a pretty rigorous priority setting process, reorganization, as Diane has talked about, and it's settled on 4 major priorities and 3 enablers that will be focused on over the next 5+ years. The 4 priorities, obviously we have recruit, support, retain teachers and principals. There's building a foundation for reading and math, connecting high school to career and college, and improving low-performing schools. These are the strategic priorities. Now, underlying that, because we realize at TEA that we are in some ways the farthest away from the classroom, so we don't have any, any hubris about our ability to actually, help in the ways that are in the classroom at all the time. So we've added to these priorities some enablers, and that is 1, to increase the transparency, fairness, and rigor in district and campus academic and financial performance. 2 is to ensure compliance, effectively implement legislation, and inform policymakers around these priorities, and then also to strengthen our foundations at the agency so that we can focus on resource efficiency, culture, capabilities, and partnerships. And part of that is because, as you know, following the legislature, we have a set amount of funding, and we want to make sure that that money is actually going out to do the work and support the work that you do in the classrooms and with your teachers. So out of this reorganization, there have been several new departments that have been created. And as Diane suggested, one of these is ours. This is the Department of College, Career, Military Prep. A couple things to say about that. One is that it really takes some of these programs that have lived historically or in curriculum as a whole and pulled them out to support that third strategic priority, which is around college and career prep. And so CTE we're excited to have as part of this particular department. The other ones are high school programs, and then also sitting right in the middle, which is pathways. And I'll give you my elevator speech on pathways and talk a little bit about it in more depth in just a few minutes. But you'll notice there are arrows kind of in between the high school programs and CTE. And that's because what we're recognizing is that maybe for too long, some of these programs have been siloed. So CTE over here, college readiness over here. And what we're recognizing now is that students take many and diverse routes to get to career in college. You have some students who will go on straight from high school, go into a four-year college and matriculate from that college with a bachelor's degree. There are also a lot of sobering numbers showing that doesn't happen as often as we'd like. And so what we want to do in terms of pathways is to broaden the options that are available to students, and CTE is a core piece of that. There is an overarching demand from industries, that we hear all the time. We need skilled, middle skill workers. We need workers with these certifications. And we have jobs that we can't fill. And so part of our role in coordination with the TWC and the coordinating board is to make sure that these pathways are opened up so that a student can take a CTE endorsement that might lead to a level 1 or level or beyond certification, leading to employability that might include some post-secondary work, even some AP courses, and be followed on top of that with a pathway through a post-secondary institution. So in this way, what we're trying to do, and the best way I can talk about pathways is that it's there in the center to blur the lines and make the connections between CTE, these other high school programs, and to create and support all of the districts and schools in Texas in helping students and their parents chart these pathways so that, for example, they might graduate with a higher wage paying job that is going to help them pay for college. Because we know we have a lot of students now who are exiting high school, enrolling in college, but not finishing. But we know that we have a lot of students that are either going into college, they don't have the job skills to actually support that post-secondary work on their own. They're taking out a lot of loans, and they're seeing themselves rack up a lot of debt, and in some cases not even finishing at the same time. So all of this is really focused on allowing these pathways to be more sustainable for students going forward so that they can chart their pathways that might have multiple on-ramps and off-ramps along the way. One last thing I will say about this, and that is the military piece of this. The commissioner has talked a lot about the fact that in some cases our students, while they may not be prepared at some instances for college and career, we're also hearing a lot about them not being prepared for the military if they choose that. And let me just say, the military is a career. We acknowledge that. The reason we pulled it out is that we want to make sure that that is something that is focused on and that we continue that conversation and that the programs that we have continue to support all aspects of career options that are available to them. So I wanted to speak a little bit about, so what are these three kind of entities? You know what CTE is, but I did want to talk a little bit about the high school programs, the pathways, and then CTE from the standpoint of priorities and some of the work that we're planning over the next 5 years. For high school programs, what's included in this? Well, first of all, I'll step back and say our priority here is to expand access to and also improve the quality of high school programs. Some of them have been in existence and are being supported rather well right now. They include early college high schools, T-STEM academies. There will be a push for P-TECH academies, is what we're hearing. These are all shades of early college high schools, including the new industry cluster innovation academies. I think what's exciting about these and why they're all put together and why we have these arrows connecting CTE with these others is that, for example, T-STEM Academies focuses on one of the major programs of study that can lead to an endorsement in CTE. Also, it can lead to college credit or industry-based certifications. The Industry Cluster Innovation Academies, have any of you looked at it or interested in planning for that grant? A couple of hands. It's on our grant opportunities website, and I'd urge you to look at it. It is essentially, for lack of a better term, an early college high school with a CTE focus. And so in this instance, you're seeing these two areas start to blend together. Also in high school programs, we have advanced placement, international baccalaureate, and high school equivalency, the new text chase assessments that are going to be rolled out in a little less than a week. But the idea here is that you have all of these dual credit and, I would add, industry-based certification opportunities through special programs in high school. And in this case, we want to see more students who are maybe taking a CTE route take advantage of some of these types of structures to earn certifications that are going to lead to higher wage jobs, help them rack up some post-secondary credit that, I'll just say this, hopefully is articulated across the state. That's another big issue that we're looking at. And finally, that may include international baccalaureate or advanced placement courses. There's no need to silo these particular pieces, and I know a lot of you and a lot of schools are already blending these pieces together. But from an organizational standpoint at the TEA, we want to open up these pathways and start to provide multiple different options that are more flexible, allowing districts to take advantage of some of these sorts of structures, but also work with their students to understand that there are multiple routes to higher wage paying jobs, and that may include certifications, it may include post-secondary. I think in our world looking ahead, it's going to include more often than not a little bit of both. Yes, it has a long name, don't blame me for it. It is the Industry Cluster Innovation Academies. It was just published, I think, in September, and it has a closing date of November 11th. But it offers planning grants for districts that are seeking to open I would say open. Existing early college high schools can also apply if they want to kind of move over into this bucket. But it offers grants for planning of anywhere from $150,000 to $400,000 for the next year, and it is really focused on some key areas of study in CTE. So sitting in the middle, as I noted, is Pathways. Now, Pathways is not a program per se. It is an initiative. It is a set of projects meant to bolster and support these other two areas. Our priority here is really around resources, articulating career pathways that are aligned to state and regional industry needs, and facilitating the process for an accountability proposal and rules framework for incorporating industry-based certifications into the accountability system. So I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment, but there's a lot packed into this. So as you can note, there are initiatives around accountability. I know that many of you, I hope you're excited that thanks to HB 5, that districts and schools are going to be able to be recognized for the industry-based certifications that they provide to students as part of the 2017-18 accountability framework. There's no penalty. I got an email the other day, and I think this is one of the things I'm really excited about for this particular aspect. I had a school leader email me and said, if we don't offer these, are we going to be penalized? Absolutely not. This is a way for us to broaden the definition of what college and career readiness means, and that was done through HB 5. This is a means of implementing that particular piece. In addition to that, we also have the Tri-Agency Initiative, which is, I think, a huge opportunity because, as you know, there's TEA, there's the Workforce Commission, there is also the Coordinating Board. And we are all have historically worked together. We have all, frankly, historically also done our own things. And I think now we want to bring these three pieces, these three agencies together around a set of core recommendations, which were released, I want to say, week before last in draft form. And they focus pretty heavily on what industry is looking for and how the agencies can support districts and schools in providing the offerings, the training, and the supports for ensuring that students can A, have access to programs that lead to industry-based certification or some combination of apprenticeship and post-secondary work. And it also allows us to kind of pool our resources and our brain power, so to speak, to work together to create resources, opportunities, grants, and other aspects that will help kind of push this forward. So part of what we're doing, TEA has been tasked with leading that tri-agency work, and so that's a big part of the Pathways work that sits in our department. I'll touch back on the accountability rules framework just a moment because everybody has tons of questions about that, and I know there's a longer session on it tomorrow. I will come back to it to say a couple of things. One is this is an opportunity, and we'll be using the Perkins list. We also sent out a to the administrator addressed letter asking for schools, for school districts and charter schools to submit any other certifications that were not listed on the Perkins list. Because what we want to do is compile a comprehensive list and then create a rules framework for which of those would be eligible. And that is part of the work that we're tasked with in the criteria. Yes, sir?
Are you going to encourage entry-level certifications rather than just exit level?
These are focused by statute specifically on those endpoint certifications. There are other ways through the accountability system to get through courses of studies and other pieces, but this particular piece, and it is just one, is focused on the endpoints. So we'll collect all of those, draft a rules framework, and then over time we'll post that. The commissioner has noted and is committed to gathering a lot of feedback on this. There's going to be, I'm sure, a lively discussion over what makes the list and what doesn't and why. But fundamentally, what's at the heart of this is that we want to help foster those conversations between industry, higher ed, and K-12 so that as you're offering programs, as you're counseling students in potential areas that might lead to post-secondary opportunities and or some sort of higher wage paying job through certification, that they're graduating, for example, with a certification the industry actually needs. And a lot of times, sometimes in certain regions, there is great collaboration already going on. In other regions, we've heard from counselors who really want to know which of these certifications matters to industry. And sometimes those conversations aren't happening. So this is one way to drive that forward. So that will be a long comment period where industry, others, K-12, higher ed gets to weigh in. We'll finalize that for 2017-18. And that will move forward. One thing I do want to emphasize, though, is when you look at what industry needs are, I was talking with some technology folks yesterday or day before, and we were talking about the skills and the jobs that they are looking to fill where certifications don't even exist yet. And that is the nature of, I mean, there will always be welding, there will always be certain pieces, but in this kind of information economy that we're seeing, there are also jobs that require certain skills that, well, the job hasn't been created yet, but we know we're going to need these types of skills. And so my question to them was, all right, how do you come together as Microsoft, as Google, as Apple, all the folks who are here in Austin and elsewhere, also hospitals, banks, finance centers, how do you come together and start to help us understand what a certification might look like in that area so that we can start to create programs around that? Because we want to get to a point both to recognize districts, but we also want to stop the conversation from where it has been in some links where industry says, I'm not getting the skills that I need and it's all their fault and so forth. And that, I mean, we want to start to bridge those conversations with some concrete areas in which we can build programs or support programs that you are offering. And just one more note on that. This list, this accountability framework, is going to be reviewed annually. So this is not something that will be released, and for the next 10 years, it will be forevermore. We realize that that's not the way things work in industry. That's not the way things work really anywhere. So we will be reviewing this on an annual basis, collecting more information from K-12, from industry, from higher ed, to update and add and subtract when certain certifications are just no longer relevant, but more importantly, to add those that as they come along are going to be more and more important and actually start to fill the gap between what industry needs and what programs are available to students. Because it's really my sense that you're going to have three things happen with this list. One, you're going to have some certification the industry says we no longer need those or we don't recognize them. Two, they're going to say these are really important. We'd love to see more of these. And then there's going to be a third conversation is there are these other things we need, and there's either not a certification for it or nobody's offering it. And so these are opportunities for ongoing conversation and program building that I think will be really exciting. And yes, there is the accountability portion, but it is recognition. And I think that's what's most exciting. Next on our list of pathways, and I think this will be interesting to the folks in the room, is we are very much focused on the importance of college and career counseling. We are also, for those of you who are counselors, very much aware of how difficult it is to provide meaningful college and career counseling when you have a load of 200 students to one. 300, 400. I will just say this from a personal perspective. My daughter is in high school, and she's one of the inaugural classes for HB5. And it's tough because I think the ratio is something like 350 to 1 in her school. And it's just very difficult. So we can talk about this, but how do we add capacity? How do we actually expand the options that are available for delivering college and career counseling? And so one of the things we are going to be looking at is how do we bring other folks into the mix? Not around, there's a lot of work that is traditional counseling, the scheduling, the course placement, these sorts of things. And then there is college and career counseling, which is absolutely related to that, but in some ways a little bit separate and can be pulled out. And so we want to look at some opportunities to maybe offer micro-credentials to other organizations, other folks who may not be qualified to be a total counselor, but can certainly come with their background, with adequate training and credentialing to be able to serve in the capacity of having some of those conversations and working closely with the counselors who are there to build that capacity. So we can talk about HB5 and the endorsements. I will be honest, my daughter, when I got the letter back from my district, which I like very much, I'm very happy with my district, but it was the legislature has mandated that your child selects an endorsement. Here they are. Here's a brief description of them. And it was daunting. My 8th grader at the time was like, I'm not really sure what I want to do. I'm, 13. And I'm like, yeah, so we'll pick it. And I think what we want to do is, there's that aspect of it, but I think also in high school is allowing that opportunity, because really when you get to 9th, 10th, you should be revisiting that and figuring out what are your interests. You picked, a multidisciplinary. Is that really what you're interested in now? Is that really, the kind of avenues that is going to actually pay off for what you're looking for? Maybe you should be going into a STEM endorsement. And so all of that to say that high school, to me, is also a major focus of this work, even though I think a lot of the attention has been paid to middle schoolers picking this. As having another middle schooler who's going to be doing the same thing, I can tell you she's absolutely not prepared to do that. So anyway, college and career counseling is a big piece of this. And then I think the last piece is there's a lot of potential in HB5, all the other relevant legislation, HB 18, et cetera, that we want to help districts realize the potential of. And so a lot of that is going to be focused on through this third bullet, which is around resources. Resources is a nebulous term, but I can tell you that one of the things we are looking at, and there's some good apps that exist, there's some good resources that already exist, but we want to create some sort of technology application that allows counselors to work with students parents to work with their students in multi-languages, if it's available, to kind of reverse map from some of the occupations they might be interested in through the coursework that's available. It's not a new idea. There's some great resources that are out there, but I think we wanted to take this out of the paper resource piece and actually put it into some technology that a parent could be there with their student. A counselor could also do the same thing to provide resources and information around what are the certifications through this particular area of endorsement that I might be interested in that might help me get through college in a little easier fashion because most of our kids are going to be working through college in many ways, not attending the traditional or less traditional, I think, nowadays of going to the dorm and the four-year school. It's just the reality. So that is Pathways. It is a lot of work, and I will just be honest with you, the plate keeps on getting filled up every time I go to a meeting, but it is a lot of work, and I think with a combination of kind of bolstering the counselors and the ability to provide that information, focusing on the information so that it's really easy to get to. We have a lot of resources out there, so does TWC, but they are spread out, they are diffuse, and in some cases they're not as user-friendly, and I'm speaking of some of our stuff as well, as it needs to be for a parent whose first language is Spanish and wants to help, wants to have that conversation, but some of the information is dispersed or it's just too difficult to kind of wade into a site to get. So last, certainly not least, I actually kept the best for last, is career and technical education. And you'll notice that there is overlap between all of these, and I hope you see that. The high school programs, the Pathways work, the career and technical education work, these are not distinct areas, and I think it makes it hard for us sometimes to figure out, okay, well, what is this versus this? But at the same time, it's a huge opportunity for us at the agency to blur these lines a little bit more as we move forward. But our priority going forward is really to create resources, incentives, and policies that are going to help you, your schools, your districts, provide high-quality CTE programs that are aligned to industry needs and higher-wage job opportunities. We've got a really good opportunity, and assuming and hoping, fingers crossed, it passes. The Perkins reauthorization bill has been passed in the House. We're waiting for the Senate to get over a small tempest in a teacup, I think. I'm not talking about the election either. But really, there's one kind of piece that's sticking out in the bill that I think they're arguing over, but hopefully in the lame-duck session we'll see that passed. But the new Perkins reauthorization actually offers some extended flexibility to states in terms of the kinds of things that we can fund, the kinds of incentives that we can offer for aligning programs to industry needs, for fostering those relationships with industry. I was able to sit in on a panel a couple of weeks ago, and it was interesting because we had a member of industry from Toyota in San Antonio. We had a superintendent, and we also had a higher ed person, and it was interesting to hear them talk. But the industry representative, they've created a pretty deep relationship with their K-12 and higher ed things, and that's great, and it's something to be celebrated. But I think the question that came from the audience more than anything is, how did you get there? How did you set up these relationships? In some cases, it's very easy. They're local, there's a need, there's close collaboration. In other cases, it's not. And so how do we start to build these sorts of relationships together? The Industry Innovation Academies is a good example of something that's trying to do that, because it requires business partnerships as part of this. And it requires industry partners to put a little skin in the game as well in terms of funding and support for this work. So we have, I think, a great opportunity there. We'll be looking at the Perkins list of certifications as well to update that particular piece as part of this. And then for CTE, again, a focus on resources, but we want to start consolidating these resources together. This is part of a broader agency initiative. Not terribly exciting, but there is a huge revamp in the academics area to redo the entire website and actually turn it more from what I would call a compliance-based website if that exists, but one that focuses more on compliance to one that actually provides services, information, and resources in a more real-time way. So we'll be a huge part of that particular piece in consolidating, standardizing, and filling the gaps with those resources, as we know there are a lot of new courses that are coming up in that area. That includes the creation and curation of new CTE resources. In some cases, there are already great resources that are out there. How do we bring them back into one place? And then finally, the last two pieces are this research and development into industry needs, both statewide and regional, to support these certifications. I think it's going to be, again, a hugely important effort on our part. And then finally, and important, is that we want to kind of alter the approach that we have taken to some of the grant and technical assistance opportunities to provide more targeted assistance to schools and districts who are working to make that alignment process more seamless between what they're offering and what industry needs. And a part of that includes really filling the gaps. In some cases, maybe an industry wants you to offer a certification. Maybe you don't have the staff to do it, right? Maybe there's just not the expertise. I think for those of you interested in computer science and software development, that's a huge issue. We can't. I heard somebody say, and I know I'm over time, and I'll stop in just a moment. But I heard somebody say we got to grow the number of computer science teachers. That's not going to happen. It may happen in some piece, but I don't think people are going to be leaving their software jobs to come to work. So how do we do? I'm just saying the reality. Although I did, if it makes you feel better. But I think the reality is, again, through micro-credentialing, through other kinds of avenues, through grant and partnerships, how do we bring some of that expertise into the classroom to offer those sorts of programs and certifications? And that's definitely something we want to focus on to support that work. Copyright. So that's it. I just want to close by saying, again, that this is a huge opportunity, and I do hope you feel like it's an exciting time to be part of the CTE world, because if you haven't noticed, it's being elevated, not just in our department, which is just a reorganization, but in the conversations that are coming out of the governor's office, the legislature, all of the agencies. There's a huge focus to make CTE one of these clear pathways that, yes, we're going to be blurring lines in a wonderful way, but at the same time that a lot of resources and a lot of attention is going to be focused on how do we help you create these programs that are going to ultimately benefit the students as they graduate from your high schools. So thank you very much.